Ivara paced outside Severus's chambers, the leather-bound journal clutched tightly in her hands. She had debated all morning whether or not this was a good idea. Severus didn't strike her as the sort of man who would appreciate birthday celebrations. In fact, she was almost certain he'd scoff at the very idea. But she also knew how much he valued knowledge, precision, and craftsmanship, qualities her alchemy journal reflected. Taking a deep breath, she knocked lightly on the door, the sound barely audible over the crackle of the hearth inside. A moment later, his familiar voice cut through the quiet.
Enter.
Ivara stepped inside, the journal tucked under her arm. The room was dimly lit, the flickering glow of the candlelight casting shadows across the rows of shelves lined with books, jars, and vials. Severus sat at his desk, a quill in hand, his sharp features illuminated by the firelight. He glanced up briefly, his expression unreadable.
Miss Frostbane, to what do I owe this interruption?
She hesitated for a moment, her fingers brushing the edges of the journal.
I know you don't celebrate birthdays, but I thought you might appreciate this.
At that, his eyes narrowed slightly, curiosity flickering in their depths. He set the quill down and leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers.
And what precisely is this?
Without another word, Ivara stepped forward and placed the journal on his desk. The cover, made out of worn leather, bore intricate embossing, an unmistakable hint of the care she had put into creating it. Severus's gaze shifted to the object, his sharp features softening, just a fraction as he reached out to pick it up.
It's a copy of my alchemy journal. It contains my recipes and techniques, potions I've created or improved in Skyrim. I thought you might find it interesting, or at least useful.
He opened the journal, his long fingers brushing over the parchment. The pages were filled with meticulous handwriting, detailed diagrams of plants and regents, and carefully outlined instructions. The corner of his lips twitched faintly, though whether it was a smirk or a sign of genuine appreciation was unclear.
You transcribed all of this?
Ivara nodded, her voice softer now.
Every page. It's not everything. I kept some personal notes back in Skyrim, but it is a collection of the recipes I use most often. Some are healing potions, others fortify strength, or resist elements. There's even one for invisibility. I thought perhaps you'd enjoy comparing our methods.
He didn't respond immediately, his attention focused on the journal. His eyes scanned the pages, pausing now and then on particularly complex diagrams. The room was silent save for the crackle of the fire and the faint scratch of his fingers on the parchment. Finally, he closed the journal and looked up at her, his expression unreadable.
Your approach to alchemy is unorthodox yet undeniably effective. A fascinating perspective.
I hoped you'd think so.
His gaze lingered on her for a moment, and there was something almost contemplative in his eyes.
Why give this to me? Surely you could have kept it for your own use.
Because I trust you to value it, and because you've taught me a lot since I came here. Consider it my way of saying thank you.
He leaned back in his chair, his fingers still resting on the journal's cover.
You think far too highly of me.
I think exactly as highly as you deserve. Everyone deserves something nice on their birthday. Severus, even you.
You presume much, Miss Frostbane.
Perhaps, but I'm not wrong.
She shrugged lightly, her smile growing. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the warmth of the firelight casting golden hues across the room. Then, without another word, Severus turned his attention back to the journal, his fingers tracing the embossed cover as though memorizing its texture. As Ivara turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of him opening the journal again, his gaze intense and his brow furrowed in concentration. She smiled to herself, a quiet satisfaction settling in her chest, even though he'd never admit it outright. She could tell the gift had meant more to him than he would ever say.
Happy birthday, my mage.